The studio lights were bright, the crowd silent, and Keanu Reeves, usually calm and quiet, sat on the edge of his chair as Alexandra Grant's voice echoed across the live broadcast. "You think you know him," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "But there are things about Keanu no one has ever heard." The audience gasped. Camera zoomed in on Keanu's face, searching for emotion. But he stayed still like a man standing in the middle of a storm, waiting for the next wave to hit. Alexandra's hand shook slightly as she looked at him. For years, he carried something alone. He never wanted anyone to see his pain, but it broke us apart. Keanu's heart pounded. His chest felt heavy. He wanted to speak, to explain, but the words stayed trapped inside him. This wasn't part of the plan. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The host leaned forward, sensing the tension. "Alexandra, are you saying Keanu kept secrets from you?" "Not secrets," she whispered. "Burdens." Her eyes filled with tears. "He never told me what really happened the night everything changed." The studio went silent. Every camera pointed at Keanu. Every second stretched like a lifetime. He finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "Some pain doesn't need to be shared on television." But Alexandra didn't back down. "Then tell them the truth," she said softly. "Tell them what you did for her." The audience stirred. Whispers filled the room. "Who's she talking about? Who is her?" Keanu's jaw tightened. His fingers clenched around the microphone. "This isn't the place," he said. "It's the only place." Alexandra replied. "You hid behind silence long enough." The crowd leaned closer. The host tried to interrupt, but the air had changed. This was no longer a simple interview. It was confession, heartbreak, and love colliding in front of millions. Keanu looked at Alexandra. There was anger in his eyes, but also sorrow. He didn't want the world to know that the woman they were talking about wasn't Alexandra. "You want the truth?" he said finally, his voice trembling. "Fine, I'll give it to you." The host gestured to the crew to keep the cameras rolling. Everyone could feel something big was about to happen. Keanu took a deep breath. "The night Alexandra's life fell apart, I wasn't where I was supposed to be. And because of that, someone got hurt. Someone I loved." A shocked murmur spread across the audience. Alexandra lowered her gaze, tears falling. "You still don't forgive yourself, do you?" she whispered. Keanu shook his head slowly. "No, and maybe I never will." As the lights dimmed for a commercial break, Keanu looked straight into the camera. The pain in his eyes told a story that words never could. The world had just seen a side of him no one imagined existed. After the commercial break felt like eternity. Keanu sat in silence, staring at the floor, his hands trembling slightly. Alexandra was a few feet away, her eyes red but calm. The studio crew whispered nervously, unsure how to handle what had just happened. When the lights came back on, the host forced a smile, trying to ease the tension. "We're back," he said lightly, but everyone could feel the weight in the air. Keanu looked up. "You want the truth," he said quietly. "Then let's not hide anymore." The audience leaned in. Alexandra's lips parted, but she didn't stop him this time. "Years ago," Keanu continued, "before I met Alexandra, there was a woman I loved. She wasn't famous. She didn't want the spotlight. She was just good, kind, real." He paused, the memories flashing through his mind like old film reels. "But one night, there was an accident. I was supposed to be there with her, but I wasn't. I was on a movie set, chasing something that didn't matter anymore." Alexandra closed her eyes. She knew this story, but hearing it again hurt in ways she couldn't explain. Keanu's single quote's voice broke. "She didn't survive." Gasps filled the studio. A few people in the audience began to cry. Even the host went silent, his hands frozen on the cue cards. "I blame myself," Keanu whispered. "Every single day. I thought if I just stayed busy, if I kept working, I could forget. But pain doesn't fade just because you hide it behind smiles." Alexandra turned to him. "You tried to protect me from that," she said softly. "But you built walls instead." Keanu nodded. "And you tried to break them. I pushed you away, thinking it was the only way to keep you safe from my darkness." Her voice trembled. "You didn't need to protect me. You just needed to let me in. For a moment, there was nothing but silence between them, years of love, guilt, and unspoken words filling the space. Then the host asked, "Why tell this now, Keanu? Why reveal it here?" Keanu looked around the studio. "Because truth matters, even if it hurts, even if it makes people see you differently. I've lived along pretending everything was fine." The audience sat still. Completely drawn into the raw honesty before them, Alexandra wiped her tears. You once told me forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about letting go of the pain. I did, he said, his voice faint. But I never learned how to forgive myself. The host leaned forward carefully. And what about now? Keanu looked at Alexandra. His eyes softened. Maybe this is how it starts. The camera zoomed in on their faces, two souls. Broken, but still reaching for something pure. And just as the host began to wrap up the segment, Alexandra's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen, her face turning pale. Keanu. She whispered. You need to see this. He frowned. What is it? She handed him the phone. His eyes widened. The audience watched as the color drained from his face. Whatever he saw on that screen was about to change everything again. Keanu stared at the phone in Alexandra's trembling hand. The image on the screen made his heart freeze. It was a photo, grainy, slightly blurred but unmistakable. The woman in it was the one he had lost years ago, but she was alive. No, Keanu whispered, his voice cracking. This can't be real. The host looked confused. What's happening? Alexandra turned the phone around for everyone to see. Someone just sent this to me, she said softly. They claim she's alive. The audience gasped. A wave of shock rippled through the studio. Keanu's breathing grew heavy. He ran a hand through his hair, his body trembling as memories collided with disbelief. Where did this come from? He asked. Alexandra shook her head. The message didn't have a name, just coordinates. And the words, she waited for you. For a few seconds, everything went silent. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. She waited for me? Keanu repeated under his breath, staring at the ground. The host tried to regain control of the show. Keanu, are you saying this woman you thought was gone might actually be alive? Keanu looked up slowly. I don't know, but if there's even a chance, I have to find out. Alexandra's eyes filled with tears. Keanu, wait, you don't even know who sent it. It could be a trick. People will do anything for attention. He stood up, shaking his head. No, Alexandra, I can't ignore this. Not after all these years. The studio crew started whispering frantically as he removed his microphone and walked toward the backstage exit. The audience called his name. Confused and emotional. Alexandra followed him, her heels echoing on the studio floor. Keanu, please stop. Listen to me. He turned, eyes burning with emotion. You don't understand. I've lived every day thinking she was gone because of me. And now, if there's a chance she's out there alive, I need to see her. Alexandra's voice broke. And what about us? Keanu hesitated. His lips parted, but no words came out. I can't give you an answer right now, he whispered. The host's voice echoed faintly from behind them. We still live, he said, but neither of them cared anymore. The camera followed Keanu as he stepped outside into the night air, the studio lights fading behind him. Rain had started to fall, soaking through his jacket. Alexandra stood in the doorway, watching him go. Her heart ached. She knew he wasn't just chasing the past, he was chasing the one piece of peace he never had. But deep inside, something felt wrong. The timing, the message, the photo, it all felt deliberate. She looked down at her phone again. A new message appeared. This one said, if he goes there, he won't come back. Her breath caught. The world around her blurred. Alexandra ran toward the exit, shouting, Keanu, wait. But by the time she reached the street, the only thing left was the sound of a car engine fading into the rain. The rain poured harder as Keanu's car moved through the empty streets of Los Angeles. His hands tightened on the steering wheel, the city lights reflecting off the wet windshield. His mind was a storm of questions, fear, and hope all at once. The coordinates Alexandra showed him were still glowing on the phone screen beside him. They pointed to a quiet coastal town 2 hours away, a place he hadn't been to in years. He whispered to himself, if this is real, if she's truly alive. His voice broke before he could finish the thought. Back in the studio, Alexandra sat alone in the green room, her phone still in her hand. The message, if he goes there, he won't come back, echoed in her head. She felt a chill crawl up her spine. Something was deeply wrong. She grabbed her coat and rushed toward the parking lot. I'm not letting him face this alone, she muttered. Meanwhile, Keanu drove faster as thunder rolled above. Every sound of the rain reminded him of the night he lost her, the screams, the broken glass, the sirens. And now, that same storm surrounded him again. When he finally reached the coast, the air smelled of salt and danger. The address led him to an old house near the cliffs, its lights flickering faintly through the fog. He stepped out of the car, the rain soaking through his clothes. His footsteps echoed on the gravel path. The door creaked open before he even knocked. "Keanu," a voice whispered from the darkness. His breath stopped. He knew that voice. It was soft, trembling, and painfully familiar. "Is it really you?" he asked, his voice shaking. A shadow stepped forward, and there she was, the woman he had mourned, the face he had dreamed of for years. Her eyes glistened with tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "They told me you moved on. They told me to stay hidden." Keanu's world tilted. "Who told you that?" Before she could answer, a loud noise came from behind the house, a sharp crack like a gunshot. She screamed. Keanu grabbed her arm and pulled her inside. "Get down." The lights flickered again, then went out completely. In the silence, a deep voice came from the shadows outside. "You should have stayed away, Keanu." His heart pounded. "Who are you?" he shouted. The voice didn't reply. Only footsteps, slow, deliberate, getting closer. The woman clung to him. "You don't understand," she whispered. "It's not safe. They were watching me all these years. They wanted you to believe I was gone." Keanu's jaw tightened. "Who's they?" But before she could answer, the door burst open. A figure stood in the rain, hidden under a black hood, and behind that figure another set of headlights appeared. Alexandra's car. She stepped out, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. "Keanu!" she screamed. The hooded man turned toward her. "Alexandra, get back!" Keanu shouted. But it was too late. The figure raised something metallic, glinting in the lightning. Alexandra froze as the sound of thunder and a single shot echoed through the storm. Asterisk, the sound of the gunshot shattered the night. Keanu froze, his heart hammering so hard it hurt. Rain splashed against his face as he turned toward Alexandra, who stood motionless near her car. For a second, everything moved in slow motion. The wind, the rain, the faint echo of thunder rolling over the cliffs. "Alexandra!" Keanu shouted, running toward her. She fell to her knees, her hand clutching her shoulder. The bullet had grazed her, but blood stained her coat. The woman from the house screamed from inside. "No, stop." Keanu grabbed Alexandra, pulling her behind the car for cover. "You're going to be okay," he said, his voice shaking. "I promise you'll be okay." She winced in pain. "It's not me I'm worried about," she whispered. "They're after you." The hooded man stepped closer, his face still hidden under the shadow of the storm. "You never should have come here," he said coldly. Keanu stood, his clothes drenched, anger rising through the fear. "Who are you? What do you want?" The man lifted his head slightly, revealing half his face, scarred, cold, familiar. Keanu's eyes widened. "You," Keanu said softly. "It's you." Alexandra looked up in confusion. "Who is he?" Keanu swallowed hard. "He was my stunt double years ago. We worked together. He blamed me for ending his career after the accident." The man smirked. "You took everything from me, Reeves. The fame, the roles, the life. I lost everything. You walked away like a hero." Keanu shook his head. "You're wrong. I didn't take your life. You let your anger destroy it." The man laughed bitterly. "And now you'll lose what matters most." He aimed the gun again, but suddenly, the woman from the house rushed out, stepping in front of Keanu. "Don't!" she cried. "Please don't do this." The man hesitated, his hand trembling. "Move, or you'll join him." "You've already taken enough," she whispered. "You lied to me. You told me Keanu didn't care, that he forgot me. But I see now you used me to hurt him." Keanu's breath caught. Everything made sense. The woman hadn't disappeared by accident. She had been manipulated, kept away to feed someone else's revenge. The man's expression twisted. "You don't understand. I saved you from him." "You didn't save me," she said firmly. "You stole my life." In one quick motion, Alexandra picked up a rock and threw it toward the man's hand. The gun clattered to the ground. Keanu rushed forward, tackling him into the mud. The two men struggled violently, fists and rain mixing into chaos. Years of guilt and rage poured out of Keanu with every hit. "You destroyed lives because you couldn't accept your own mistakes," he shouted. The man roared and swung, but Keanu caught his wrist, twisting it until the gun was out of reach. Finally, with one last push, he pinned him down. Sirens echoed in the distance. Someone must have called the police. The man lay still, breathing hard, his eyes empty. "You think this changes anything?" he whispered. "She'll never forgive you." Keanu didn't answer. He just looked at Alexandra, who stood trembling in the rain, watching him with eyes full of pain and something deeper. The woman who was once thought dead stepped closer, tears running down her face. "Keanu," she whispered, "you can't fight the past forever." He looked between her and Alexandra, his soul torn in two. The police lights flashed in the fog, painting the night in red and blue dot, and in that broken moment, Keanu realized the hardest choice of his life was still ahead. Asterisk, the sirens grew louder until the police cars stopped at the edge of the cliff road. Flashing red and blue lights broke through the fog, lighting up the rain-soaked ground where Keanu stood frozen between two women, one from his past and one from his present. Officers rushed forward, disarming the man who had tried to destroy everything. He didn't resist. His face was blank, almost peaceful, as if losing was the only thing he had ever known how to do. Keanu stepped back, breathing heavily, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion. Alexandra touched her shoulder, wincing, but she was still standing, strong, silent, watching him. The woman from the house looked pale and fragile, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. She whispered, "I never wanted this, Keanu. He told me you had moved on. He said if I came back, you'd hate me for what happened." Keanu's voice trembled. "I could never hate you. I thought I lost you because of my mistake. I carried that pain for years." She nodded slowly, her eyes full of regret. "I lived in fear, thinking I was protecting you. But I see now, we both just kept punishing ourselves." Alexandra stepped closer, her eyes soft but firm. "Sometimes love doesn't end. It just changes shape. What matters now is what you choose to carry forward." Keanu looked at both of them. The rain had slowed, the storm fading into a cold mist. Everything around him felt quiet, like the world was holding its breath, waiting for him to decide which truth to live in. He took a long breath. "I've lived along chasing ghosts," he said finally. "The past doesn't deserve my future anymore." The woman from the house smiled faintly. "Then let me go, Keanu. You already gave me peace tonight." An officer wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and led her to safety. She turned once more to look at him, her eyes saying goodbye without words. When the police drove away, Keanu stood beside Alexandra, watching the dark waves crash against the cliffs below. Neither of them spoke for a while. Finally, Alexandra said softly, "You didn't have to follow that message. You could have ignored it." He smiled faintly. "You know me better than that. I had to face the truth, even if it broke me." She nodded. "And did it?" He looked at her, his eyes filled with tiredness and something pure. "No," he said quietly. "It freed me." She smiled through her tears, reaching out to hold his hand. "Then maybe now we can stop running from what's real." He squeezed her hand gently. "I'd like that." The rain stopped completely, leaving only the sound of the sea and the wind. Dawn began to rise slowly behind the clouds, turning the sky into a pale gold. Keanu turned to Alexandra and whispered, "Thank you for never giving up on me." She smiled, her voice barely a whisper. "Thank you for finally coming back." As the first light of morning touched their faces, Keanu knew something had changed inside him. The pain that once defined him had finally loosened its grip. It wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning born from truth, loss, and love that refused to die. And for the first time in a long time, Keanu Reeves walked toward the light, not as a broken man, but as someone who had finally forgiven himself.